right, I think we are live again. Welcome back. Thank you all for being here. In yesterday's live stream, the goal was to write the story beats for two chapters and then generate and revise those two chapters. And today, well, we didn't quite get there. I wrote the story beats for the two chapters. I ended up splitting one into a third chapter. I generated all three of those chapters, and then I only had time left over to revise one. Hello, Honey Bun. Welcome back. Um, and so, yeah, I got the three generated, revised one. So I have two left to revise. I didn't manage to get to them today. Guys, seriously, you have no idea how busy my schedule is these days. I'm like running a full time job with Kindlepreneur, doing my own membership right now, and running that and running support for that and doing literally everything and creating content for that. It's like an insane amount of work. And then there's these live streams, trying to get some writing done, managing a 2-year-old in the house. Like, oh, but I love it. Literally the last couple of days, I have gotten to the end of the day and I've just had this live stream left. And there have been a couple of days so far where I just got to the end of the day and I was like, oh, I don't know if I could do this. Like, I just feel so exhausted right now. And then I did the live stream, and for some reason, I felt energized by the end of it. Just something about talking to you guys, doing some creative work. It's just really awesome. So I want to thank you all for participating in these. It's really been a pleasure, and will continue to be a pleasure as I work through these chapters. So let's outline what our goal is for today. So I have those two chapters left over that need revision. I'm going to revise those two chapters and then generate the beats for the next two chapters. That is my goal for today. So in essence, we will still get two chapters done today. It'll just be kind of backwards from the way we were trying to do it yesterday. And hopefully everything will work out there. We'll have enough time and it'll all work out great. So let's just dive right in, shall we? We're at chapter 6 is where we're at right now. Once I finish this chapter, we'll be officially about a quarter of the way through the book. So that'll be exciting. Mina and Jonathan stepped out of their carriage in front of a large stone building on the Strand. It was late at night, so Mina didn't have to worry about sunlight, but the street was a lot busier than she was used to, and she felt comfortable. She couldn't help but clasp her hands together while being surrounded by so many people. For a moment, she almost went into a fight or flight mode. That's more tell-y instead of showy, let's say. For a moment, her heart wouldn't stop. No, she doesn't have a heart. Ha! For a moment, all she could do was stare straight, just willing herself to keep going when mixed sense and loud noises assaulted her senses. She breathe. She could do this. But could she? Perhaps Arthur had been right after all. The sounds and smells of the city at night threatened to overwhelm her. The clip-clop of horses' hooves on the cobblestones, the cloying sense of perfume and body odor emanating from the crowd. Say perfume, body odor, and the sweet sense of blood, of unspilled blood, emanated from the crowd. The rumble of carriages and chatter of voices melding into a dissonant roar. Mina's muscles tensed, every nerve taut and ready to spring into action. Her vision sharpened, the dilated pupils taking in every detail of her surroundings despite the shadows of the night. It would be so easy to give in to her predatory instincts, to get lost in the heady rush of the hunt. But then Jonathan offered her his arm in all sense of fear. All sense of fear vanished. And it was as though every taut muscle in Mina's body relaxed on command. It had been a long time since Jonathan had shown any kind of physical affection, even something as small as offering her his arm. It was a big step up for him, and she was almost so overwhelmed by the action that she didn't move when Jonathan tried to lead her inside. But before he could say something, she snapped herself out of it. Get a grip on yourself, Mina. She snapped herself out of her funk and took his proffered arm. The simple warmth of human contact soothed her fraying nerves. True human contact. Seemed to soothe her even more than the taste of blood. She gave Jonathan's arm a grateful squeeze as they ascended the steps into the large, well-illuminated entrance hall. The bright lights and polished wood interior lent an air of sophistication and gravitas to the proceedings. To the event. Mina glanced around, noting the smartly dressed patrons perusing display cases and murmuring to each other in hushed voices. An auction and house employee discreetly made his way through the hall, stopping to speak briefly with attendees before moving on. Remember to look for someone you recognize, Mina murmured to Jonathan as they threaded their way through the hall. Jonathan nodded, his brow furrowing slightly. Don't think we need that. I'm still not sure I'll remember their faces well enough. It was all such a blur. Very well, but if this is one of Dracula's brides, I'm still not sure I'll remember their faces well enough. It was all such a blur. He trailed off, shaking his head. Even now, years later, his memory of that time remained frustratingly unclear, but Mina had faith that he would know one of Dracula's brides. But there was more to recognition than just facial features. Actually, we don't need that. It's not all just in their faces, Mina pointed out gently. There's likely to be a look about her, something that causes you to remember or feel uneasy. It could be nothing more than a feeling. Of course, Jonathan acquiesced. I'll pay attention to any strange feelings or impressions. I'll watch for anything. And who knows? My memory may still surprise us. Me. Mina smiled encouragingly and gave his arm another supportive squeeze. She knew how difficult all of this was for Jonathan. I like little details, and Claude is good at this. It's not perfect, obviously, but like earlier in this chapter, she gave Jonathan's arm a squeeze, and now it says gave his arm another supportive squeeze. Like it knows that this is the second time that she's given his arm a squeeze. Things like that. It's like hard. It's harder for the AI to do, I feel. All right. She knew how difficult all of this was for Jonathan, how conflicted he felt about her becoming a vampire, although he tried hard not to show it. I'll say flaunt it. And this we could just say, this was difficult for Jonathan. He'd made it clear that he was conflicted about her transformation, though he tried hard not to flaunt it. She was endlessly grateful for his steadfast loyalty. She was endlessly grateful. But she was still grateful that he was here with her at all. Most in his situation would have run away at best and tried to murder her at worst. An usher approached and led them into a smaller room in the back where the lights were where the lights were dimmer. And many of the patrons were even wearing veils or had some kind of party mask to veil their identity. Mina idly wondered just how many of these items being auctioned today were legal. The shadowy atmosphere hinted at secrecy and intrigue. She and Jonathan found seats near the back, away from the clustered group of bidders toward the front. The auction began with a few lower-level items, something to get the crowd warmed up. Most sold for a modest sum, though there were a few that surprised Mina with how fiercely they were bid upon. As item after item was presented, she noticed that many of them appeared to have a theme: mysticism. The objects for sale were not only old, but many were purported to have some sort of magical power or ancient legend associated with them. This was very curious. What kind of place was this that attracted those seeking the arcane and supernatural? That's good. Jonathan leaned over and murmured, "There's a woman seated 2 rows in front of us and all the way to the right who hasn't said anything this whole time. She looks suspicious to me. There's something about her that makes me uneasy." Mina followed Jonathan's discreet gesture and spotted the woman in question. She was sitting very straight in her seat, her face completely passive. Her jet black hair was perfectly straight, yet full-bodied, falling well past her shoulders. She wore an ornate red silk dress that, while clearly expensive, also looked practical, the kind of outfit one could easily move and run in. But there was definitely something, the kind of outfit Mina herself might wear. But there was definitely something about the woman, something Mina's heightened vampire senses picked up on that unsettled her. It was difficult to isolate with so many human smells surrounding them, but Mina was certain this woman was no ordinary auction patron. She spent the remainder of the auction surreptitiously watching the mysterious figure, noting her complete stillness and composure. So unlike the other attendees who whispered and shifted in their seats, fans fluttering to combat the stuffy room's heat. Their auction paddles often raising up or down as if in a game. Through all of that, the woman was poised like a coiled spring, waiting. The auctioneer soon brought out a thin silver flute, which Mina immediately recognized had to be the one the smugglers brought in, the object the other vampire was seeking. As the auctioneer began his spiel about the flute's supposed magical legend, Mina quickly glanced at the black-haired woman. She was sitting even straighter now, readying herself as if to bid. Jonathan leaned in. That must be the flute from the docks. Let's not draw undue attention by bidding on it. Okay, no, I do want her to bid on it. All right, here's an example of where I'm going to take this and ask Claude to expand on it. So this was chapter 6, so I'm going to go into this one. Expand on this section to include the dialogue from the auctioneer. Let's see. Yeah. This is good. The auctioneer soon brought out a thin silver flute, which Mina immediately recognized had to be the one the smugglers brought in, the object the other vampire was seeking. Yeah. We can. Oops. Soon brought out. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, the auctioneer proclaimed, our next item up for bid is this exceptionally rare example of a medieval ceremonial flute. He held the flute up, letting the silver catch the dim light. According to legend, this flute was crafted in the 13th century and was played by the Pied Piper himself during the tragic events in Hamelin. Ooh, it even gave me the village. It is said to hold a dark power from the piper's music that led the village children away. Yeah, it's a little like dramatic, but I think it works for the context of the auctioneer. Murmurs rippled through the room at this pronouncement. The auctioneer allowed a dramatic pause before continuing. I think we can just go with that, get rid of the murmurs. Our experts have verified this flute dates back to the correct period and is constructed of the finest quality silver. The reserve bid will start at £100. I think... Hang on, I need to just look real quick at value of £10 in the 1800s. £100 in 1800 is equivalent in purchasing power. Well, we should say actually, this is closer to 1900. £100 in 19 is equivalent to the purchasing power of 15,000. So this would be 1,500. I think that's fine. So I hit that just about perfect. We'll start at £10. I guess I should spell that out. Who will begin the bidding on this unique and macabre piece of history? As the auctioneer began his the auctioneer concluded his theatrical spiel about the flute's supposed magical legend, Mina quickly glanced at the black-haired woman. She was sitting... Actually, we could just get rid of that. Mina quickly glanced at the black-haired woman. She was sitting even straighter now, readying herself as if to bid. Actually... yeah, we can get rid of all of that. The flute's bidding commenced, and sure enough, the woman raised her paddle after the first few bids, an intent glint in her dark eyes. Her intention highly focused. When Mina impulsively raised her own paddle in response, those eyes snapped to her. Locking in a tense stare. In that instant, Mina knew she was in danger. This needs to be more dramatic. In that instant, an overwhelming and unexpected fear stole over her. She was in danger. In the woman's gaze, Mina could see plainly that she recognized exactly who Mina was and why she was there. A cruel, predatory look flashed across the woman's face so quickly Mina almost missed it. Message received. Do not interfere again. That's a little off. Well, she was all in for it now. Mina's fingers tightened on her paddle as she debated her next move. She had... well, that doesn't quite fit. So... this evening would not end well. Mina's fingers tightened on her paddle as she debated her next move. Here's a good example of show instead of tell. We could say Mina's fingers tightened on her paddle. That's good. That's showing. But instead of saying as she debated her next move, we could just say, what should she do? She had to know more about what this woman, more about this vampire woman and why she wanted the flute so badly. But open confrontation now would be unwise. Jonathan seemed to read her thoughts. Let's go, he whispered. We only cause further problems here. We can pursue her after. No, we don't want that. Like, he would say, let's stop the bidding, he whispered. We'll only cause further problems here. It will only cause further problems here. If we win, we can pursue her after. Reluctantly, Mina nodded and lowered her conceding the bidding war. The woman's gaze remained locked with hers a moment longer, cold and threatening, before she lifted her chin in satisfaction and turned away. She had won the flute with a final bid of 110 pounds. As the woman stood to go collect her prize, Mina grasped Jonathan's sleeve. Stay here, I'm going to follow her. We need answers. Ignoring his worried look, she rose and slipped through the rows of seats, moving swiftly toward the back room. Thankfully, no one protested her presence as she stepped through the door into the storage area. There, the woman. The mysterious woman was just retrieving the flute from an attendant and turning to go out another door. Moving silently as only a vampire could, Mina glided after her, keeping to the shadows. She had to learn more about this mysterious Dracula connection. This felt like the first concrete lead they'd had. She would not let it slip away now. The hunt was on. Victor, so no, I don't write only fiction. Most of the nonfiction that I write is for like online articles and things like that. My background is in SEO and doing SEO articles. So I do write a little bit of nonfiction for that, and a lot of the nonfiction that I write is for authors. So like my book, 10,000 Words an Hour, which you can get for free by signing up for my membership, is a good example. And I have another book inside that membership as well called From Zero to Publish, which is basically a self-publishing one-on-one guide for those who have nothing, for starting out with nothing. No email list, no advertising budget, nothing like that. So that's my second book. Also, I'm about to start working on a third book, which everybody in the membership will be getting one chapter a week. And that book is going to be about the super prompt, since that's kind of like my thing now. And I'll be sharing a whole bunch of different super prompt tactics and techniques and different types of super prompts that we can use, including one for fiction, obviously, which I'm using right here, and you can see that pretty prominently. But I'm going to be doing another one for like SEO articles, which I mentioned is what my background is in. Like nobody has a super prompt or has any kind of AI techniques on creating SEO articles that works like the one I've got. Like it's mind blowing. So that'll all be coming pretty soon in the membership. I'll have one on creating book descriptions and stuff like that. And so it's fun stuff. Sorry, I didn't mean to turn that into like a sales pitch for the membership, but it kind of did, because I'm really excited about this stuff. We got a couple hundred people in there already, and it's really cool. Oh, any other things? Victor says your work inspires me a lot. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Yep. Bianca's currently editing her own story now. Awesome. Keep on that. I don't know how you could be doing that and listening to this feed at the same time. But, yeah. So, okay. That was the end of chapter 6. Honeybun. So, yeah, I don't know what your email is that you signed up with, so I can't look you up per se, but it should just be 14 days after you signed up, whenever that was. You can look at any of the welcome emails I sent. It should be before that. All right. Moving on to chapter 7. This one is longer, so will probably take me a little longer, but this one, and I actually have some pretty big edits that I want to make to this one, based on some ideas I had while I was thinking about it last night. So yeah, let's just get started, because we're already half an hour in, and I'm hoping to finish this one and write the story beats for 2 more. So we'll see how it goes. Mina shouted the woman through the winding corridors and dimly lit. I wouldn't say through the stone corridors and dimly lit passageways of the old auction house. She kept her distance, footsteps soft on the dusty floor, senses alert. The woman seemed oblivious to her presence as she strode with purpose around corners and through side doors. To the back, towards the back of the building and the fire escape. No, this, because they'd be on the main floor. Mina's instincts told her the mysterious figure was up to no good. Where was she going, if not out the front door? The decor of peeling paper, threadbare rugs, and flickering gas lamps lended to the building's antiquated atmosphere. Yeah, we don't really need this description. That paragraph can go. At last, the woman came to an unmarked door at the end of the secluded hallway. Glancing around furtively, she produced an ornate key and slipped inside. She wouldn't have. She twisted the handle and slipped. Inside. Mina crept forward and pressed her ear to the door. She could make out hushed female voices from within the room. Straining to listen, she discerned at least 3 distinct speakers. A chill ran down Mina's spine. Unbidden. There. They weren't just dealing with one vampire. They were dealing with 3. I'm gonna take this to Claude. First I need to figure out, I had the names of these characters written down here somewhere. Expand the following passage to include a brief conversation between the 3 vampires that Mina is listening to. Here are their names. They should be discussing how Mara now has the flute, and they can begin and that the experiments are looking promising, and that they can accelerate their plans soon, and perhaps even return to the castle. And then I'm going to go back to the chapter. So here is the section to expand. Victor, no, this isn't for, this isn't a YouTube membership. I'm not really a fan of YouTube memberships because you don't own it. YouTube does. So, no, this is my own membership. It's storyhacker.ai is how you find it. So, okay, what was he? So right about here is where we stick that. I have the flute, said the first woman. Excellent, Mara, said another voice. Were there any complications? Another woman almost outbid me, came the reply. Mara. I believe she may be the other one we have sensed. No matter, you acquired it as planned, soothed another. Soothed the third voice. The experiments are progressing well. The first voice continued. With the flute's power, we can accelerate the process. Excellent, Mara purred. Excellent. What was the name? Aval. Mara purred. Soon we shall have an army of children at our command. We don't need to get too mustache twirling here. Should we then consider returning to the castle? The third voice laughed throatily. Patient sisters, we must not get ahead of ourselves, but if these experiments succeed, nothing will stop us from bringing more souls under our master's dominion. If these experiments succeed, we yes, we will return. Mina noted two. So two of them were named Mara and Aval. Mina couldn't make out the name of the third, who spoke last and seemed to be the one in charge. Would Jonathan recognize the names if he heard them? Mina couldn't make out any other indication that these were the brides of Dracula, but it would make sense. Perhaps if she listened a little longer, ... The door was abruptly yanked open. Here's a good example of passive voice. This should be someone abruptly yanked the door open from within. Mina found herself face to face with the vampire who must be Mara. From the auction. Mara. The woman had pale skin. Actually, no, this wouldn't be Mara. A vampire she had not seen before. The woman had pale skin that seemed to glow in the dim light, but it was her eyes that shook Mina to the core. Blood-red irises regarded her with unconcealed malice as the woman's lips peeled back to reveal glistening fangs. Every one of Mina's worst fears was confirmed. Every inch of Mina's body screamed at her in unison. Run. No, the fight seat's just about to begin. Ray of Light. Awesome name, by the way. Run. With blinding speed, the vampire lashed out, her claw-like nails grasping for Mina's throat. Purely on instinct, Mina managed to twist away the deadly missing her by inches. The beast woman let out an ear-splitting shriek of fury at being denied her prey. Crouching low, Mina bared her own fangs and met the vampire's crimson gaze steadily. She would not surrender without a fight. Though her instincts, though every instinct urged her to flee, she stood her ground. The vampire bride rushed forward again. A blur of rage. This time Mina was waiting. At the last second, she dropped into a low spin, scything her leg through the vampire's ankles. Caught off balance, the creeper toppled sideways and smashed into the corridor wall hard enough to send cracked spiderwebbing through the plaster. Before she could recover, Mina seized the stunned vampire by her gown and hurled her bodily through the still open door into the room beyond. The resounding crash was accompanied by angry cries from within. The other two vampires were joining. Gritting her teeth, Mina stepped through the doorway to confront the rest. This was far from her first dangerous situation, simply becoming a vampire herself, but to take on three of those who were likely Dracula's own deadly consorts at once, the odds were daunting to say the least. She didn't like those odds. Cursing, she flexed her fingers, ready to unleash her full vampiric strength against these monsters. The room's occupants now surrounded Mina with snarls of outrage. The three vampires now surrounded Mina with snarls of outrage. The first bride she'd sent flying was back on her feet, a murderous glare twisting her otherwise lovely features. Her pale features. To her left stood an auburn-haired vampire, lithe and fox-like, sizing Mina up hungrily. And on her right loomed a towering, loomed Mara with the straight dark hair flexing. Baring her fangs at Mina. Mina kept her breathing steady, turning slowly to keep them all in view. The attack Her mind raced, seeking anything she could use to her advantage. There had to be something here she could use to her advantage. But the room was sparse, no furniture except a single wooden table and no other exits. She would have to fight her way back out. With no warning, the first, we'll say, Mara charged with a roar, barreling toward Mina like a freight train. At the last instant, Mina leapt upward, vaulting over the woman's head while raking both sets of claws. Sharp nails down her back. The vampire bellowed in pain as Mina landed and crouched behind her, but her celebration was short-lived as the other two brides immediately pounced, slashing venomously with their talon-like nails. Mina ducked and wove, avoiding the flurry of blows. The fox-like vampire was viciously fast, though managed... Did we mention fox-like already? Yeah. Was viciously fast, though managing to open several deep gashes along Mina's forearm. Jaw clenched against the hot pain, Mina smashed an elbow into the pale bride's throat, then shoved her screeching away. But the respite was fleeting. The recovered first vampire grabbed Mina in a chokehold from behind, while her auburn-haired companion raked her talons down Mina's thigh. Frustration and rage boiled up inside Mina. With a feral snarl, she threw her head back, feeling the satisfying crunch of her captor's nose breaking whole. Whirling with viper-like speed, she grasped the vampire's skull and flung her into the wooden table, which splintered satisfyingly. With a satisfying crunch. But Mina's moment of triumph was cut short as as Mara tackled her from the side. They crashed together through one wall, then another, bursting through ancient wooden panels like a wrecking ball. Wooden panels and brick like a wrecking ball. They tumbled into a large chamber filled with neatly lined rows of chairs. Mina glimpsed startled faces turning toward the commotion before she and the vampire smashed into an ornate library shelf, reducing it to kindling. Books flew everywhere. Dazed, Mina shook her head, disoriented, then her blood turned to ice. This was the auction room, still occupied. Innocent humans were now caught up in the fray. Endangered because of her recklessness, she had to stop this now. Innocent humans were here. Jonathan was here. Who is Mina? Mina's my main character for this story. She's actually from the original Dracula novel, and is one of the coolest characters in that novel, and highly underappreciated because it was written in the 1800s, and having a smart and intelligent woman was about all that amounted for feminism at the time. Um, so she was really awesome. So I'm just making her a really cool person. Also, she basically turned into a vampire by the end of the book Dracula. So it totally fits that she would be a vampire in this book, which is kind of a sequel. Mina was already back on her feet, flinging chairs out of her way like trash as she stomped toward Mina, lips curled with menace. The vampire reached down and ripped a heavy marble bust from the floor as though it were styrofoam. Oh, wait, no, this is Mara. Was already back on her flinging chairs, lips curled with menace. The vampire reached down and ripped a heavy marble bust from the floor as though it were styrofoam. As though it were paper, because I don't think they would have had styrofoam back then. Mina's mind raced frantically for options as the makeshift projectile came hurtling toward her. We don't need that. In a desperate burst, Mina flung herself sideways, feeling the rush of air as the bust shot past, pulverizing the floor where she'd stood a heartbeat earlier. The impact sent stinging marble shards spraying across the room, eliciting cries from the panicked attendees. Mina gained her feet swiftly, ignoring her many stinging cuts. She had to end this before the situation got worse. Any worse? As the brutish vampire reached for another piece of improvised ammunition, Mina shot forward and unleashed a vicious double open palm strike to her chest. The concussive force lifted the towering beast clear off her feet and flung her backward into the far wall. The towering lifted the dark-haired woman clear off her feet and flung her backward into the far wall, but Mina had no time to catch her breath. The other two vampires brides chose that moment to come shrieking through the ruined doorway, clawing toward Mina with renewed frenzy. Backpedaling swiftly, Mina led the two away from the huddled auctioneer goers through the side of the large chamber. I'm going to have to mention Jonathan at some point here, because, let's see. The pale bride reached her first, swiping that Mina ducked under. Reached her first with a swipe that Mina ducked under before driving an elbow into her jaw. The vampire's head snapped back with the force, and Mina used the distraction to grasp her around the neck and hurl her body into an antique cabinet. Glass and wood exploded outward across the floor. Before Mina could whirl to confront the next, the fox-faced vampire slammed into her from behind, all razor-sharp edges and banshee screams. Mina was driven down, smashing brutally through a heavy table before skidding across the floor. She twisted to dislodge her attacker, but the frenzied vampire sank her fangs into Mina's shoulder. Crying out at the searing pain, Mina thrashed wildly. Her grasping hand found a broken table leg, which she desperately swung backward. The jagged makeshift stake pierced deep into the vampire's side. Her agonized wail was music to Mina's ears. And she stumbled backward. Panting, Mina staggered up, trying to regain her bearings. The former elegant auction hall now looked like a war zone. Smashed finery and broken bodies littered the chamber. She had to finish this. Across the sea of debris, the hulking vampire was back on her feet. Mara was back on her feet, shoulders hunched and head lowered like a bull preparing to charge. Mina swept up a sturdy broken table leg, holding it before her like a sword. But before either could attack, a familiar voice cried out Mina's name. She turned to see Jonathan stumbling through the ruined doorway, face panicked. In that distracting instant, Mara charged, roar echoing off the ravaged walls. Mina shoved Jonathan forcefully backward and spun just in time to brace herself. The impact felt like being hit with an out-of-control freight train. Who knew a petite vampire like that could pack such force? Together, they crashed through one of the exterior walls in an explosion of bricks and wood panels. The vampire's momentum carried them across the alley outside and through the opposite wall in a deafening cacophony of shattered masonry. They tumbled violently across the dusty floor, smashing through stacks of precariously piled crates and barrels. At last, their momentum was spent, and they collided heavily with a solid brick wall that refused to yield. Shaking her head blearily, Mina shoved the Mara's bulk off and unsteadily tried to regain her footing. Her entire body felt broken, and it was amazing that she could even stand. This fight scene is starting to get a little long. I'm going to edit it in its entirety, but I may decide after I've gone through the whole thing that there may be a section or two that we can just remove. But we'll see. Mina's opponent was already back on her feet. With a thunderous howl, she lifted an entire heavy crate and flung it at Mina, who barely managed to avoid the deadly projectile. This had to end now. Didn't we say that earlier? Shit. Mina pulled together what strength she had left and launched herself through the air, hitting the beast's torso with her hitting the vampire's torso with her full body weight. The tackle carried them both through the damaged brick wall and out into the open street. They smashed down hard on the paving stones, landing in a tangle of flailing limbs. Around them, people shouted and scattered at the sight, but Mina was solely focused on her foe. She grabbed the dazed vampire's head and slammed it brutally into the unyielding road surface again and again until the creature went limp. That's dark for Claude, but I'm not sure that's what we want. Panting, Mina unsteadily rose and stared down at her unconscious opponent. Okay, so the vampire would revive soon, but for now the danger was past. This was her chance to escape and recover her strength for the next battle. She had to find Jonathan and get them both to safety. No exclamation point. Here's a little tip. Try not to use too many exclamation points in fiction. It works in some dialogue, but can actually, it's often a distraction and a kind of a sign of junior writing a lot of the time. Turning swiftly, Mina sprinted back through the decimated auction house. There's no sign of the other vampires. Had they fled, or were they lying in wait, preparing another ambush? Mina found Jonathan back in the devastated auction chamber, kneeling by an injured man's side and applying pressure to his wounds. Trusted brave Jonathan to stay behind and help, even while his own life was threatened. At Mina's entry, Jonathan looked up with obvious relief. She quickly moved to his side and helped him get the injured man on his feet. This is the part where it like invented a character that was not in my beats. So I might just have to cut this guy out altogether. Applying pressure to as well. Yeah. The night fog swirled around them as Mina led the way through the winding alleys. They paused only to find someone else to help the man before she and Jonathan continued on. The night fog swirled around them as Mina led the way through the winding alleys, wanting to push as much distance between them and that accursed auction house as possible. They traveled in silence at first, Jonathan no doubt rattled by both the perilous fight and the sorry state Mina was in. By both the chaos of the fight and the sorry state Mina was in. She could only imagine how she looked, torn, bloody, gown, face and hair wild from the battles and don't need face and hair wild. But the wounds would mend swiftly, and Mina had no regrets for battling. Alright, so they're not being pursued. So I'm gonna grab the last chunk of this, go back to Claude, say, I'd like to, hang on. Continue the following selection so that the remaining 2 vampires do pursue Mina and Jonathan, and she is forced to run with Jonathan on her shoulders until they lose the 2 vampires. But at some point she can't seem to outdistance them, and as she strains, she finds herself morphing for the first time into a huge bat. She grabs Jonathan in her bat. Do bats have claws? I assume they do. Bat claws. And they fly away, successfully eluding the vampires. Oh. Hang on. Hang on. Dang it. I didn't give it the passage I wanted to continue from. I meant I'd like you to continue from this passage. See if that works. It might not. I might have to start over. Didn't quite do what I wanted. Here, I'm going to just open a new chat. Continue the following story so that the remaining two vampires do pursue Mina and Jonathan, and she is forced to run. Jonathan on her. Yep. And then here is the selection. Not quite what I was thinking, but it'll work. I can just modify it. Suddenly, she heard noises approaching them from behind. Soft footsteps, too light to be human. Approaching rapidly. Her heart sank as she realized at least one of the vampires had regained consciousness and now tracked them through the... Her heart sank. The other two had found them. They're coming, she whispered to Jonathan. Stay close. She hoisted him, let's see, without what should we hack? Jonathan's query was cut off abruptly as Mina swept him into her arms and hoisted him on her shoulders. Then, with a burst of speed that she didn't have in her, she leapt onto the nearest building. The pursuit was on. Behind her, she made out the soft footfalls of the other two vampires as they too leapt behind her. Mina desperately put on another burst of speed, but she was tired and she was hurting. She couldn't keep this up for long. The other vampires were in far better condition, and they didn't have to carry a grown man on their backs. As she As she leapt from one building to another, a silent form tackled her from behind. Instantly, Jonathan fell from her shoulders. No. Gasping as he plummeted several toward the ground several stories below. Mina screamed, but this time a scream of desperation. Her scream turned to a piercing shriek as she threw herself after Jonathan, completely ignoring the vampire who seemed to have slipped past her. Missing Mina somehow. It was only then Mina reached out with her claws and caught Jonathan by the arms. Her claws? It was only then that Mina realized that her body had changed, was changing. Jonathan As soon as Jonathan regained his composure, he looked up and gasped as Mina began to as Mina shifted and morphed before his eyes. Smooth skin gave way to dark fur, limbs elongated and curved into savage talons. Within moments, the woman was gone. In her place hovered a giant bat, wings beating the fog back with blasts of cold air. Mina's piercing shriek Mina didn't have time to think. She grasped him gently in her claws and took to the skies. Behind them, frustrated howls rang out as the vampires emerged from the mist, only to find their prey now safely flying out of reach. Mina's unearthly senses guided her through the night, the city lights blurring below. Suddenly attuned to sound in a way she had never known before. The entire city was illuminated beneath her. Jonathan trembled in her grasp, but she held him securely. Huh? What happened? When Mina finally descended outside a quiet inn, far from their attackers, she carefully released Jonathan and shifted back into human form. And slowly, all too slowly, Jonathan gasped. What was that? I don't know, Mina admitted. It just happened. I mean, I knew Dracula sometimes impersonated a bat, but I never thought, I never would have supposed. What matters is that we escaped, said Mina. Not sure she liked the way Jonathan was looking at her. Yes, he said. Well, yes. Of course. I suppose we should make our way back to the back immediately before they find us again. All Mina could do was nod her head in agreement and keep herself from collapsing. When Mina and Jonathan at last arrived back at Dr. Seward's home, they found Arthur pacing as he waited for them in the study, his concerned eyes raked over the disheveled forms. Thank God you made it back. We expected you hours ago. I was getting ready to send out a search party. What happened? You both look dreadfully unwell. Mina sank wearily into a chair by the fireplace, heedless of the dirt and blood clinging to her tattered dress. We ran into some old friends, I'm afraid. I do believe that Dracula's brides are here in London. Arthur went pale. All of them? Amina saw Amina's nod. He lowered himself shakily into a seat opposite hers. Tell me everything. Taking a fortifying breath, Mina related the night's events in full, with Jonathan filling in details here and there. Arthur listened intently, brow creased. He had seen firsthand the terrible power these vampiric monsters possessed. To know they once again stalked England's capital darkened his mood considerably. Yeah, I don't think we need that. This is my fault, Mina finished bitterly. I never should have approached them alone. Now they could be anywhere in London and may come seeking vengeance. She clenched her fists. We must find them and end them permanently. The important thing is that you and Jonathan made it back safely, Arthur replied. As for the vampires, we will deal with them together from now on. No more solitary heroics, agreed? He gave her a stern look, but Mina knew Arthur well enough to see the deep concern in his eyes. She started to assure him in the end, she nodded. I suppose. Her words were cut off as a sharp rap at the study door made them all jump. Tense as coiled springs, they stared wild cards at the entrance. Mina was on her feet in an instant. Lifting her lip in the beginnings of a snarl, ready to launch herself at whoever dared intrude. Had the brides followed them home? Moving swiftly to the door, Mina wrenched it open, fully prepared to attack. But instead of finding a vampire's bride beyond, she was greeted by an exceptionally tall, sharp-featured man in a well-worn suit and long coat. An inquisitorial glint in his gray eyes. In one hand he casually twirled a walking stick, and his head was crowned by a slightly battered top hat. Taken aback, Mina froze in her fighting stance. The peculiar newcomer calmly looked Mina up and down, then gave a thin but surprisingly warm smile. "Good evening, Madam Harker. I believe you and I have a most urgent matter we must discuss." He tapped his cane decisively on the doorstep. "My name is Sherlock Holmes." Boom. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. All right, that's chapter 7. Now, we don't have too much time. We have about half an hour. I'm going to try and get a couple of chapter beats written. So this will be for chapters 8 and 9. We'll create a super prompt here as well. So these can be retired. So this is chapter 8 super prompt. And this is chapter 9 super prompt. Let's go ahead and copy what we have in this one. Hang on, I need to figure out what is actually happening in 8 and 9. So yeah, 8 and 9. It's actually going to be these two. And this might be a case where I find out I need to expand these chapters a bit more too. But we'll see. So let's see. This will go into chapters 8 super prompt. And this one will go into chapter 9 super prompt. Oh, wait, we don't have super prompt for 9 yet. Do I label or title my beats? Each of these super prompts has the beats in them, so I can reference them there if needed. But when I'm revising, I rarely need to do that because I usually have it in my head well enough that I can keep it straight. In the case of the ending of this last chapter where I had her turn into a bat, that actually wasn't in the original beats. That's why I was writing a lot of it myself just now, because that was like an idea I had at the end. or like after I'd already written the beats, and so I just included that in. All right. What am I doing? Style. Okay, characters. That's what I wanted because we're gonna start including Sherlock in these character beats now. Sherlock. Probably only gonna get one of these chapter beats written, unfortunately. Okay, overview. We got all right. Chapter beats. We will get. And then that's all good. Okay. And let's prepare the super prompt for chapter 9. We will first need the overview. The chapter beats. And then I think we need to add Van Helsing to this one as well. To the character list. We'll put him right after Mina because he's the second most important character in this whole thing. Okay, now we're ready to start writing the beats. So let me pull up a notepad here. Move this over. Go back to the outline. Okay, I might need Claude in all this. So I'll keep Claude at the ready. Okay. For a moment, everyone stares at Sherlock Holmes as he stands outside their doorstep before he asks if he can come in. Period. New line. Mina is uncertain at first, comma, but then Jonathan speaks up asking if he is Sherlock Holmes, comma, the famous detective, comma, to which Sherlock replies that his works have achieved some notoriety, period. New line. Arthur asks how Sherlock found them, comma, but then says, open quote, let me guess, comma, the special tone of the mud on one of our shoes led you here, comma. Or ... close quote. He comes up with several other plausible explanations on how Sherlock could have found them, period. Sherlock merely replies that it was nothing so complex, comma, and hands out a note for Mina to take, comma, before telling her that a mutual friend of theirs gave him that note, comma, which is what led him to their place, period. Mina recognizes the note that she left William the day before, a few days earlier. Comma, and puts two and two together, period. She tells Sherlock that he must be the tall man that little William spoke of before, period. You were the one that he was the one that got them out of the slave labor situation that he and other children are in, period. New line. Sherlock confirms that he is the one, comma, and once again asks if he can come in, period. Mina says, of course, and steps aside for him to enter, period. Sherlock comes in and in a very polite tone tells them that there is something afoot in London that he does not like, period. He is the only one that seems to care about the children, comma, the homeless in the city, comma, not just because they act as a informant network for him, comma, but because no one else will care for them. Period. New line. He tells them that many have started to disappear, comma, and it has taken him some time, comma, longer than he would have liked, comma, to pin down what is happening to them, period. Whoops, that's somehow turned off. Fazio. So, yes, I include the height and weight in the character profile. I don't know if it helps in particular, but I think, you do see it pulling from the physical description from time to time where it'll say like their blue eyes or their tall frame or something like that. So, yeah, it definitely is pulling from that at some points here and there. All right, let me start over. And while it has taken him longer than he would have liked to track down the source of the problem, comma, he has managed to locate a cabal of three unusual women, comma, three women that exhibit qualities not found in an ordinary human being. Period. New line. Mina nods and simply adds that they just had a run-in with those three women tonight. Period. And Sherlock replies that they must know about their ... gifts. To which Mina replies that she does. Period. Sherlock replies that it is fortunate that Mina has the same gifts, comma, or she likely would have not lasted the night, period. Mina asks how he knew, and he says the signs are obvious, and points out various telltale signs about Mina's current appearance that explain exactly about how make it seem obvious that she is a vampire. Period. New line. But Sherlock also mentions that he knew some time ago, after the first time that William spotted Mina at the warehouse, and reported back to Sherlock, period. After digging into some old newspaper clippings around one named Lucy, Sherlock was able to put together more clues, enough to give him a picture of how Mina, Jonathan, Dr. Seward, and Arthur were all connected and involved, period. He also mentions Dr. Van Helsing, and asks if the doctor is with them tonight, period. Mina, grimly, tells him that Dr. Van Helsing has been gone for some time, that he stayed in Dracula's castle in Transylvania to try and find more answers, and they haven't heard from him since, period. New line. Then Sherlock says that he would like to help, but fears that his own resources, and those of Scotland Yard, are far insufficient to tackle on 3 vampires single-handedly. Period. Then he mentions that after the commotion at the auction house just moments earlier, which he heard about almost immediately, he felt the time was right to come and confront Mina and the others, period. He feels that maybe the 4 of them will be able to help. But he is, unexpectedly, unsure of where to start. Period. New line. Jonathan grimly suggests that they have to go back to Transylvania, period. They need to find out what happened to Dr. Van Helsing, and to see if he has any answers, period. He was going to study the vampires, comma, to find their weaknesses, comma, and they needed every ally they can get. Period. New line. Sherlock agrees that this is a good course of action, comma, as does everyone else, period. When it is settled, comma, Arthur says he will front the cash that they need for the voyage, comma, but he is coming too, period. Dr. Seward also agrees, comma. No. They decide that Dr. Seward is the only one that should stay, comma, to keep an eye on things and to watch over the estate. Mina says that it is settled, comma. For once, having no objections to what everyone else says, period. Sherlock says that that is splendid, comma, and he will inform his colleague, Dr. John Watson, comma, that he will be gone for a few weeks. Period. Arthur asks if Sherlock is actually coming with them, comma, to which Sherlock replies that he wouldn't miss it for the world. Period. At last there is something beyond his understanding, comma, a new challenge that he has never anticipated, comma, and the prospect excites him greatly, period. All right, that is good for the beats of chapter 8. Yeah, I'm going to try and do the beats for chapter 9. I might go over the 9 o'clock line a little bit today, but that is fine. However, I need to prepare these first. So we get 100 paragraphs. Oh, whoops. Didn't want that. So we got the story beats there. Oh, now moving on to chapter 9. We'll go to the outline. Yeah, this feels a little abrupt to go immediately back to Transylvania. So we might have to divide this chapter in two. I'm just going to start doing the beats. And we'll get to the end of a chapter, whatever it ends up being. All right. They spend the next few weeks. Actually, I should look this up. How long would a voyage from England to Romania take in the 1800s? That's probably a better question for ChatGPT, actually. This is one of the best benefits of AI, in my opinion, is to do research for stuff like this, where, like, you're not going to find on Google someone tracking the time it would take to get from England to Romania in the 1800s. And, you know, ChatGPT might get it wrong, but it will probably come up with an answer that at least seems right. This is too complex an answer. 30 to 60 days. That seems like a long time. I want to ask Claude. Several weeks to a few months. So 4 to 6 weeks. I'm just going to say next few weeks. Few weeks. Yeah, she can fly, but only in a bat form. And I mean, Dracula needed a ship to get him to England, so can't just fly from England to Romania. That's a long trip. Hold up in the first passage that Arthur could book from England. From Brighton to Romania. Comma, though it wasn't a very large vessel, comma, and Mina had to stay below decks most of the time because she couldn't be out in the sunlight. Period. New line. Plus, comma, she was still recovering from her battle with the 3 brides of Dracula, comma, which gave her and the others a good excuse to give the crew for her spending most of her time below decks. Period. But in truth, comma, she hates it. Comma, the cramped quarters, comma, having to hide her true nature all of the time. Period. The only comfort she gets is when she is visited by Jonathan, comma, and the two have a number of conversations. Period. Sherlock is also a refreshing company, comma, as he does not judge her, comma, at least not like most do, comma, but merely asks her questions about being a vampire. Comma, as if he wants to learn every shred of information on the subject. Period. New line. Mina had grossly underestimated how long it would take to get to Romania, comma, thinking perhaps a few days at top speed, comma. But it was around the time that they rounded the Iberian Peninsula and went through the Strait of Gibraltar that she realized just how much further they had to go. Period. Not only was it maddeningly boring below decks, comma, but she was getting thirsty as well. Comma, and being in a confined ship full of rough sailors did not help matters. Period. New line. But at long last, comma, they finally make it to trying to figure out what the port was that they sailed into. Varna. What is the, let's see, outline the journey that Jonathan Harker has to get from England to Dracula's castle. What are all of the steps? This is one of the advantages of writing something. Well, it could be an advantage or disadvantage of writing something based on something in the public domain. You can like just go to the source and figure things out. But I guess the advantage to not doing it that way is just making the whole thing up is that you can just make the whole thing up. Oh, so this is he didn't travel by boat. From Varna to Dracula's castle, what would the path be? What is the nearby town that Jonathan Harker mails letters from in Romania? Robin, so to answer your question about where Mina gets blood from, so in my universe, the way I've set this up is that vampires don't actually have to drink blood. Um, Drinking blood allows them to preserve their immortality, essentially. If they stop drinking blood, which is very difficult for them because it's like an addiction, uh, then if they can manage to do it, they end up basically aging at a normal rate. And so they will eventually die of old age. And I'm about to get to that in a chapter pretty soon, actually. But yeah, that's pretty much how my world building works. Bistritz. There we go. That's the city that I wanted. They finally make it to a port city on the Black Sea in Bulgaria. Period. From there, they find a train to take them all the way to period. Once again, Mina feels relatively helpless, as she can only travel by night, or under a shadowed hood, moving between buildings as often as she can, period. She hates the travel, and wishes it were over, period. part of her wishes she could just spread her wings and turn into a bat again, comma, and fly the rest of the way, period. Though she has a feeling that that might take a lot more effort than it would to take a train, period. So she continues to follow the others on the long trip, period. New line. The conversations with Sherlock Holmes continue, comma, and provide a welcome distraction from her misery, period. Sooner or later, the topics of conversation turn to him, comma, and he relates a number of the adventures that he had been on, period. She was amazed she had not heard of him sooner, comma, though she admits to herself that she has been rather preoccupied of late. Comma, but eventually she begins insisting on listening to some of his stories over again, comma, especially the tale of, open parenthesis, insert famous Sherlock Holmes story here, close parenthesis. Oh. Dang it, it's been like, sorry, it's been pausing here. Period. She soon insists on him retelling her certain stories, comma, especially the one of, open parenthesis, insert famous Sherlock Holmes story here, close parenthesis. Appropriate, comma, which he begrudgingly does, period. New line. Eventually, comma, their conversation turns to that of Jonathan Harker and Dr. Van Helsing, comma, and Mina relates everything that happened to them, comma, including what happened to poor Lucy, comma, and she even gives Sherlock a copy of Jonathan's diary, comma, which she had taken before they left to review before they reached Dracula's castle, period. Sherlock finds the book utterly fascinating, comma, and finishes it in a single night, period. This is nowhere near as miserable, though she has made this trip before, comma, it was not nearly as miserable before she was a vampire, period. From they make their way to and from there hire a coach to take them all the way to Dracula's castle. Period. At first, no one in the village wants to help them, but eventually Arthur is able to pay someone triple what it would normally cost to get them close enough to the castle that they can walk the rest of the way, but even that man is hesitant to take them even that far. Period. New line. Sherlock asks the coachman as they are traveling why he is so upset, didn't the vampire hasn't the threat of Dracula's castle been eliminated? ? The coachman responds that someone still lives there, and the wolves still howl at night. Period. He ominously states that nothing is safe. Period. Once they leave the coach, the night has already fell, and they walk the rest of the way to the castle. Period. Inside the castle, they can see evidence that someone is there and awake, as there are candles lit in one of the windows. Period. They walk up to the door and Sherlock knocks. And that's going to be our chapter. All right. So we're basically adding a chapter here. So we're not even getting to Van Helsing yet. So they travel to Transylvania. I'll just put that there so I have a note of it. And we'll grab these beats. Prepare the chapter 9 super prompt. And that's going to be it for tonight, you guys. Thank you so much for being here. I will probably generate these beats off camera because that'll just be easier and it'll save some time. But hey, we got through 2 chapters. Finally, essentially. I edited 2 and generated 2. So that works for me. So I'm just going to do the finishing touches here and then be off. So yeah, thank you so much for being here. Again, I'm really grateful for all of you guys that I see here all the time. I won't name names because I'm sure I'll miss somebody, but you guys are here and I'm so grateful you're here. And I'm looking forward to being here again. So quick disclaimer. So tomorrow we'll be doing this. And but Friday and Saturday I will not. So there will not be any live streams on Friday and Saturday. I'm taking a quick break. My wife and I and my daughter, we're all going on a single night camping trip out in Kitty Hawk in North Carolina. So I'll see you again tomorrow, but then it'll be a break until the following Monday. So, yep. Hope that all works for y'all.